right, you guys, this episode 50 of War Stories, and without further ado, I'm going to get straight to it. So check it out, you guys. I just dropped episode 49 of War Stories, this episode 50. I want to at least try to get both of these out to you guys tonight. So let me get straight back into this. So I'm going to take you guys back to the county jail again. We're going to go all the way back to 1988, 89, though. This is when I'm 18 years old, 18, 19. For those of you that don't know, I'm about to get hit with 7 years for my first bid between San Francisco and San Mateo County. Back in those days, my MO was robberies, my method of operandi. My thing back in those days was just committing strong arm robberies. It didn't matter whether it was a legitimate business or whether it was what I used to call nickel and dime robberies on the street, just picking somebody randomly, running up on them with either just hands or a weapon and going through their pockets or taking their jewelry or their wallets, whatever. The one thing I didn't get involved in that other people seem to think is okay is snatching purses. We always looked at that, at least me and my homies from my hood, we looked at that as a cowardice move. Somebody that's out there snatching purses, that's just somebody who needs to get the dog shit beat out of them. Anyway, so, you know, females, for the most part, were off limits anyway. We never used to go after women. We used to just go after cats that we seen out there on the streets in any situation. So anyways, I ended up getting caught up for 4 different robberies out of San Mateo and San Francisco. And together, they ended up giving me 7 years ran bow-legged or consecutively, which meant that one county gave me 4 years and the other one gave, well, actually, San Francisco gave me 2 and San Mateo ended up hitting me with 5 years. They weren't playing. I don't know why I was out there messing around in San Mateo, because when I was a youngster and I was out there running around, running amok on the streets, wild, I always heard there was 3 counties that you did not want to get caught up in, and that was San Mateo, Coco County, and I want to say the third one was either Santa Clara or Monterey County. Those were the 3 counties you didn't want to get caught up in, because that, for one, they'd wipe you out because they had the money to do it. And for 2, they were bad counties to get caught up in because they stretch you out if you got caught doing dirt out there. Anyway, so it's 88. I'm in the county jail. This is my first time, you know, getting ready to go to prison. I'm basically waiting on a bus. I'm going back and forth between these 2 counties, you know, for my court dates. It was crazy, man. I was in transit almost every other month, going San Mateo. Then I leave San Mateo. I go to court over there, come back to San Francisco. And what was crazier about it is I was missing my court dates. It wasn't like they were putting me on a bus in a timely fashion so I could catch up with my other court date. I would actually miss court and be in custody, and the judge would get mad at me for missing a court date, or they would act like it was my fault. When I was in custody and I wasn't in charge of transportation, it was an awkward situation. But you know, going back and forth for like around 18 months, I was glad to get out of there, finally get on the bus and just go. So anyway, while I'm in the county jail, I ended up getting involved in a number of incidents. You guys know some of them. I talked about it in some of my past war stories. There was a couple stabbings I got caught up in. There was some other learning experiences that I had to go through as far as just jail politics, things that you just don't do, things that cause animosity. You know, I was a young, cocky youngster that was going to prison for, 7 years isn't a long time, but it's a good little chunk of change when it's your first time. So I was getting myself mentally prepared to step off into that environment. And, again, I don't want to keep saying this over and over, like, prison was it was an animal house back in those days, but it was a lot different. It was a lot different than prison is in the 90s. The mentality, the the atmosphere, the politics, everything about it was different. The way, homeboys embraced the cause, the way that the bonds were handled. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on about the things that were different. Even, and I've talked about this extensively, even the guys that were in protective custody were a different breed, and they were far and few. You didn't have whole blocks, a booming population of dropouts that, like, by the day they were just getting numbers. You had maybe 1, 2, 3 bona fide dropouts, and these were guys with old numbers that might be in East Block. I remember the first time I hit East Block, there was like 2 DOs in the whole block, and we all knew where they were at. There were like 2 of them, one on the 2nd tier, one on the 4th tier, and we didn't disrespect them. We didn't engage with them. We didn't do none of that. We actually respected them and kept an eye on them, because these were dudes that we trained. These were guys that we trained them how to make knives. We trained them how to make spears, how to make blow darts, how to make bombs. So, they had the potential of turning that around on us and using it against us. So, we used to treat them with a level of respect, because we knew that they had the means to do the same thing to us that we could do to them. It wasn't like this population that's out there now, a bunch of young kids that stand on their doors and talk shit all day, disrespecting everybody that's active. They're sour because they're no longer part of the team. So they spend all their day standing on the door, disrespecting the other homeboys that are still doing their thing. It's like they're mad because they can't come to the party, or they're mad that they got kicked off the team. And it's almost like some of those dudes don't want to be in silence. They don't want to sit there and have to deal with their demons, because if they have too much quiet time, their demons start talking to them, and that's what they're trying to avoid. Anyway, so there was the county jail for me. I stayed there, I want to say it was around 16 months before I finally caught a bus, because I was going through 2 different counties, and I was missing court dates. So they kept on resetting new dates. I was there a lot longer than I needed to be, and most of it was because it was their fault. But during that 16 months, it was, the county jail wasn't only training grounds for me, and the rest of the other Northerners that were getting ready to go to prison for their first time. That's what the county jail is supposed to be. They're the training grounds for guys that are destined to prison. And this is where you're supposed to get laced up so that when you get to prison, you're not blind. Anyways, not only was it the training grounds, but I got into a lot of incidents in the county jails. When I say jails, plural, it's because there was the San Francisco County Jail, the 850 Bryant Street, the main jail, the 6th floor and the 7th floor that I talked about in the last war story. And then you had Bruno, which is an extension of the San Francisco County Jail. Although it's not in San Francisco, it's in San Bruno, California, but it is technically part of the San Francisco County Jail. It's like they're leasing some land over there for that jail, and they use it for like an overflow. They used to call San Bruno County Jail, I don't even think it's there no more. I think they actually knocked it down and built an annex out there. But they used to call it Baby Quentin because it was small, just like it was like a lot smaller than San Quentin, obviously. But when you go out to the yard, it had gun towers, just like San Quentin. It had a weight pile, just like San Quentin. The outside kind of resembled San Quentin. And then when you went inside, there was actually 6 tiers. Well, really, there was only 5 because there wasn't a first tier. It started from 2. I don't know why it started where the first tier was, but it started from like 2 north, 3 north, 4 north, 5 north, and 6 north. And then you had 2 south, 3 south, 4 south, 5 south, and 6 south. Try to say that fast. It's a tongue twister. And 6th 6 South. So, I would jump back and forth between different tiers at different times. At that time in San Bruno, the second tier was, so you had 2 South was where they kept all the kitchen workers. That was like the best place to be. Not only because, you were around food in the kitchen and you're able to steal a lot of food, bring it back and get your hustle on selling whatever it was that you could get up out of there. But, it was an open dorm. They had a weight pile in there and it was a cool spot to be, especially if there was a lot of homies there. I've been down there where there were like 7, 8 homeboys and they were hitting. We were getting KJ, everything in there. And like I said, you had the weight pile. So, we were getting paid, working out, and then, we were eating fat like kings down there. So you had 2 South was where the trustees or the kitchen workers were at. And then across the hall in 2 North, that's where they had the laundry workers. And some cats, they used to like to work in laundry. It was another dorm where everybody was together and, they kicked it the same way. And it had its benefits. You like clean laundry, creased up, you had all the Bonnaroo stuff over there. So, that's how San Bruno was set up. And again, they called it Baby Quentin. I'll post pictures. I'll have Sandman post the pictures of San Bruno when it was still up. And like I said, I think they might even have knocked it down. If they do, I'll put some of those pictures up as well. I try to get as many visuals as I can when I'm doing these stories, just so you guys can get those visual effects. Anyway, so going back and forth between, these counties in San Francisco, I was also going back and forth between San Bruno and the 7th floor. It just depended where they, I don't know how they did it. Sometimes they would just house you on the 7th floor. And when they needed room up there, they put you on a bus to San Bruno and you go to Bruno. I'd be in Bruno. I'd end up catching a bus to San Mateo. And when I come back, instead of bringing me back to San Bruno, I'd end up back in 850 Bryant on the 7th floor. And I kept doing that, just bouncing around. Anyway, so again, I got into several situations that were learning experiences for me. And, there some of the things that I went through in the jail, I had to go through because I was a wild youngster. And it kind of prepped me for prison so that, I didn't end up getting caught up. I was so wild in my county jail when I was 18, 19 years old that I want to say that some of the homies that were there actually considered trying to remove me because of the things that I was doing. Do I think they really would have did it? No. I think the thought crossed their minds because of what I was doing. But I had that I don't give a fuck attitude. Do what you're going to do. I'm going to continue to do what I do. And if somebody tried to tell me something, I pushed back. That was just my mentality. It took me to go to prison and to become an NR member in order to learn that, I had to acknowledge an authority in charge or, that I was subordinate to somebody else. So, there were things that I learned. Anyways, at one point, I would end up in 5 South. Usually they always, or 6 South. Usually they'd always put me in 6 North. That's where I always went. And I don't think that there's anything that, differs from 6 North than any of the other tiers as far as like it being a more maximum security tier or anything like that. I don't know how they classify it, but that's where I would always go. They would never put me on the south side, like 6 South, 5 South, 4 South, 3 South. They would never put me in 5 North, 4 North. I would always go to 6 North. I don't know why, but this one time I ended up in 6 South. The one time that I ended up over there. Now, all the tiers are identical over there. The only difference about the south side of the jail is So let me give you again just the schematics of these tiers so you guys can understand how they look or how they're kind of set up, because I don't know if I can find pictures. I've looked before online and I don't think there's pictures of, the tier inside of Bruno. But this is let me tell you a little bit about this too, and this is what's crazy about Bruno. So Bruno, on the tier, they don't have, the COs do not come up on the tier. They come up to count, but for the most part, they all go back downstairs and that's where they stay. So if you got drama, if somebody wants to get with you or there's going to be a fight, like we've had melees up there before where we ended up just some things happen and we ended up fighting, they won't come up there unless they hear it. And sometimes they don't hear it. If you got issues with somebody else on the tier and you guys want to get that off your chest, San Bruno was the place to do it. That was the place where you either had to learn how to throw hands or you were in trouble, because when you had an issue with somebody, we used to go to the back of the tier, which was a long tier. There's probably like 50 cells on each side. And at the end of the tier, it's just nothing but a big open area. So when cats would go back there and get they get their squab on, everybody would form a big circle and they just go at it. And there ain't no COs up there to stop it. So, cats didn't get in and be like, hey, that's enough, man. You be in trouble. I've told you guys the other war story that I got into it with an Africano up there and I ended up breaking his arm. It wasn't on purpose, but when he stuck his arm out, it went through one of the bars and I had him lifted up, was trying to body slam him. And when I fell back with him, it cracked his arm. Listen to that war story. It's a good one. Anyway, so I'm on six south at this one time. And so, well, let me finish telling you guys. I know I'm kind of bouncing all over the place, but let me finish telling you guys how the tier is set up. See, all this stuff is just starting to just flow out because I've been wanting to tell you guys these stories for a while. And don't trip. I'm going to start inundating you guys with them. I'm going to start flooding you. So you got a long tier. When you're in the front of the tier, you look down and it's pretty long. 50 cells down is long. And at the end, it's just a dead end. Down the middle of the tier, you got tables. There's probably like 10 full-length tables that go all the way, maybe 5 that go all the way down. Then you got a dip bar in the middle, or 2 dip bars in the middle. And then on both sides, you have cells, 2-man cells. So that's how it's set up. Now, and then, well, in the very front, you got an area, it's like a little enclosure. You got your phones are to the left when you go in. There's like 5 phones on the wall. And right next to that, there's a little storage type of room where they rinse the mop buckets and all that. There's just a drain in there with the sink. And that's pretty much it. In the front, they got, the garbage bags are tied up on the gates, and that's kind of how it's set up. All the tiers are the same except for 2 north and 2 south, the trustee dorms. Now, the only thing that differs from the south side from the north is this. So whenever you get in trouble and, they roll you up and you got to go to ADSEG or anything, they're on the back of all the south side tiers. 2 south or 3 south, 4, 5, and 6. So at the end of the tier, all the way at the end, there's an enclosure where there's a gate that seals off an area that holds about, I want to say, 5 cells on each side. So you'll have 5 cells back there on each side. And back there, there's like a table, a TV up on the wall, a shower area, and a phone. So those guys that are housed back there that are an ADSEG, they'll come out for an hour, and that's their little area right there. Now, when I was in 5 South, there was an individual that was back there in ADSEG, and I want to say he was probably there for either getting beat up or doing something stupid. But this dude, all he used to do was run his mouth all day, run his suck muscle. Stand on the gate, talk shit, when a lot of times cats would walk laps on those tiers. That's how long they are. They'd walk laps, just chopping it up. And when, that cat would be out programming, if you weren't aware of your surroundings and you were walking by, motherfucker would gas you, throw some piss on you, or throw some water or some shit, whatever. That's the type of individual he was. Constantly talking shit, yelling at night, would be beating on his toilet, beating on the walls, disrespecting everybody. The dude did not discriminate. He hit everybody with that shit. So, it got to the point where, like, we wanted to murder this dude. Like, if it wasn't because he wasn't letting us get sleep, it was just because he was gassing people. He had that whole area back there smelling like shit. And, he used to just run his mouth all day. So there was this white guy. There was a white guy that, I used to play pinochle with him from time to time. And he was a cool cat. I want to say he was from like back east somewhere, but he got caught up out here in Northern California. So, I used to chop it up with him. We'd be playing pinochle, and the dude was, he was in there for bank robberies. That was his thing. And the dude was sharp. Dude had a lot of knowledge about different things. And he wasn't that old. That's what stood out about him. He was probably in his mid to late 20s, but he was sharp. And being that his thing was hitting banks and doing those kind of robberies and shit. Fool said he knew, one day, let me say this. One day we were sitting there playing pinochle, and they had that fool out there in Adseg. He was out for his rec time, his little hour, and he's back there talking shit like he did every other time. And I remember making a comment to, like, man, I'm gonna fucking kill that fucking punk ass motherfucker, man. One time, the first time he walks the tier with one of these COs, we should just bum rush that fool, pack him out. The CO ain't gonna be able to do nothing but run up out of here. By the time he goes and gets get some backup, that fool would already be stomped out. So I kind of threw that out there, and when I did, this white guy, he was like, "You really want to get him?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, man." He was like, I can help you get him if you want to get him. And I was like, "What?" So he's perking my interest. Now I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He was like, "Man," he's like, "Look, man." He's like, I used to pick locks. I know how to pick locks." He's like, "I can pick that lock back there on the gate. Because I could pick any one of these locks." And I'm like, "Man, get out of here, man. You can't pick that lock." I know that for those type of locks, they take those big skeleton keys, them big, thick suckers, right? So it wasn't like one of them little small ones you can get with the couple of them little spring pins. At least I was thinking you needed one of them big, thick keys in order to do it. But he was like, "Man, check it out. I can pick that lock." He's like, the only problem is trying to pick it while that fool's back there. I can't squat down right there and pick it while he's out there because he'll be gassing me. He goes, "But I can, if you really want to get him, I can pop that lock. You guys just need to somehow distract that fool and let me do my thing," right? So I was like, "Man, let's do it." So anyways, there was a couple other homies that were there on the tier with me at that time, and they were cool cats. I got love for them. I'm not gonna say their names. I got love for them, but they weren't riders, man. They weren't the type of cats that would want to ride. You know what I'm saying? If you approached them about something, they were the type of cats that be like, they want to go home. You know what I'm saying? They want to go home, and they're not gonna do no extra shit and get involved in nothing. If I would have told them, "Hey, man, we're gonna pop this lock and we're gonna get this fool," be like, "Man, good luck." You know what I'm saying? Or hopefully you guys don't get in trouble, instead of being like, "Let's do it. Let's do it." So anyway, I tell the white guy, I'm like, "Man, how long you think it'd take you to pick the lock?" And he's like, "I don't know, man. I could probably unlock it in like 5 minutes. I gotta mess around with it and just see what kind of locking mechanism. If it's the same kind that they got in the front, he was like, I know what I need to do. I could probably do it in under 5 minutes, right? So I was like, look, I told him, look, this is what we'll do when they pop that fool out. When he comes out for his rec time, for his hour, he usually jumps in the shower, and then after that, that's when he spends the rest of his time just on out there in that little area, just disrespecting everybody, talking shit, trying to gas, anybody that walks by. I said, let's do it right then when he jumps in the shower. That'll give you about 5 minutes. And he was like, well, we'll do it tomorrow, because they'd already ran program. It was already late at that time. So I honestly didn't think he could pop the lock open. I wasn't expecting that dude to get the lock open. I thought he was just gonna, fumble with it, and it was gonna be like, I can't get it, man. It's whatever. So, but this dude was not to be underestimated. He was, oh boy, had skills, and again, just talking to him, he was the type of individual that was very intellectual. You could talk to him about something, and for his age, again, it's impressive. When I've met some dudes like that up in Pelican Bay, where they're young and they're way mature beyond their time, beyond their age. They can engage in conversations about anything and have some knowledge about everything, no matter what it is. I met a couple of homies up in the Bay like that. And I'm like, bro, where you get that shit? Well, I mean, I'd like to think of myself as being, I'm fairly educated, but like, bro, where you learn all that? I'm well read, and I watch a lot of news and politics and all that. So, I'm versed in it. That's how I learn. But anyway, so the next day, we come out, and, I don't get at him the first thing in the morning. We do our little routine. I work out, do my thing. And at some point, like it was around 4 o'clock in the evening. That's around the time when they started running the AdSeg programs back there, because during the daytime, there's too much stuff going on. They got Yard for Us, and then you got just visits and attorney visits and medical, and you got court movement. So they don't do none of that. Their programs during the early part of the day, which worked out just fine. I didn't wake up early in the morning and want to go that was the first thing I wanted to jump into. I wanted to run my little routine, and that was it. Now, again, I did not think that this dude was going to be capable of popping that lock. Otherwise, I would have had my pedazo. I had a pedazo over there. I had it hidden. It was a ladle out of the kitchen. It was a nasty one. But, I kept it where it was at. I didn't go retrieve it because I just did. Again, I didn't think he was going to be able to pop the lock. So CO ends up coming in. Comes in, he starts running their programs like he'd done every other day. And, a couple cats, they came out first before that dude had his hour out. And eventually, they end up coming in and letting him out. So he comes out like he done every other time. And he's talking shit, and he's got his little cups lined up on the table back there for anybody that walks by, and then he jumps in the shower. So when he gets in the shower, I go back there to the back, and I basically post up right there. The white dude, he squats down, he starts working on the lock. So he's working on the lock, and he's like, oh yeah, I can get this, man. This ain't no issue, right? I'll have this open in a couple minutes. And I'm like, yeah, right, man. Now, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but because I didn't think that he could open that lock, I didn't really go put a lot of people on notice. I didn't go let everybody know, hey, we're going to pop this lock and we're going to get this fool. There was some people on the tier that knew what was up. There's a lot of Africanos that knew, but, everybody's doing their thing. Everybody's Cats are on the dip bar, you know what I mean? Other cats are on the phone, dudes watching TV, other cats taking showers, other ones they're just walking laps. And it's regular routine. All of a sudden, this motherfucker pops the lock open. The lock opens up, and well, let me say this before the lock opens up. This dude, when he was in the shower, he sees me standing by the gate. So he's curious. He's like, what the fuck you doing? The fuck you doing? He's like, and then he sees the white dude working on the lock. He's like, motherfucker, you ain't gonna pick that lock. You know what I mean? Stupid ass. He was like, you think I'm supposed to be scared or something? Think I'm gonna bite into that? He's like, man, I ain't worried about you. Go ahead and try to pick that lock. You pick that lock anyway. You come up in there, I'm gonna fuck you up. He's talking long shit, boy, right? So all of a sudden, that motherfucking lock pops open. White dude picked the lock and pulled the door open. He was like, you're all good. He's like, it's open, man. So when he does that, this dude is in the shower still. He's still taking the shower. Before I could even go up in to the AdSeg, that little area back there, this dude came out of the shower. He tried to grab his towel real fast and wrap it around him, and he fucking ran straight out of the AdSeg, ran down the tier, and he ran, but he came out of there so fast that I couldn't even catch him. But as he's running down the tier, all hell broke loose. You got cats that turned around and seen him, and dudes were jumping up from their card games, from their checker games, and it looked like a pinball going down the tier. He was getting cracked from every which way, man. So while he's running down the tier, I'm on the other side of the tier running to try to catch him. He goes up to the front, and after he makes his way up the tier, a couple times he slipped, he fell, he's barefoot. He ended up dropping the towel. Now he's running asshole naked. He ends up getting kicked, punched, fucking dudes were stomping him. Finally, he ends up running up to the front. That's where I catch him, up in that little enclosure. So as soon as I get up on him, I start working his ass. I start putting hands, feet, elbows, kneecaps. I start putting that cat touched everything up in the front. He touched shit he didn't even know was there. Trust me. He was bouncing off of everything. The phones, the little storage area where the mop closet, the phones, the gate, the garbage. There's a couple other cats. I wasn't the only one on them. There was some other Africanos, and there was a little bit of everybody that was just thumping this dude. While we're getting him, he's screaming like a female. He sounded like a female sounds when they're screaming because somebody's chasing them through the park at night or something. That's the kind of scream that he was making. It didn't sound, there was nothing manly about it. His man card was obliterated, gone, didn't exist no more. So he's screaming, yelling, help, please, help, they're killing me up here. Finally, again, the COs go downstairs and they're usually always sitting on second south, by 2 south. They're always just lounging down there on chairs. And, there's a lot of shit that happens on the tiers that they don't find out about until it's too late. But, somebody that stands in the front of the gate, on the front of the tier, screaming like that, they can hear. And eventually they heard. So, we're thumping this fool. All of a sudden, the elevator opens up because they got a stairway that they run up, or they got an elevator. That's another story because they used to give us real elevator rides in that county jail. I'm talking about you go in looking normal and you come out with ooey nuts everywhere, thumped up, decent, like a get right kind of decent. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, but so the elevator opens up and about 4 COs pile out. They come out and we just disperse. We all take off like fucking bats. And, this fool's, I can hear him, everybody can hear. He's like, man, they're trying to kill me. They picked the lock, and this fool actually ended up pointing out the white dude that picked the lock. He pointed him out. He ended up pointing me out because I was back there with him. He ends up pointing out a couple other Africanos that thumped him when he was running down the tier. And I mean, he told on like, I don't know, 6, 7 people. And, although they didn't lock us up, put us in ADSEG, they ended up moving us to different tiers. They were tripping on the fact that that lock was picked. And, they ended up locking up that white dude because he said that he was the one that picked the lock. And they looked at him as a serious security threat after that. I want to say they put him on a bus and shot him back to 850 Bryant because of, the fact that this fool knew how to pick locks. Anyways, this was a quick one. It was probably more funny than anything. If you guys get the visuals, you can imagine this fool running down the tier, asshole naked, screaming like a bitch, and it looked like a human pinball. You know what I'm saying? That's how he looked, man, getting thumped around. But, it was one of them things. It was, one of these JCat type of individuals that spends all his day, all his time during the day trying to make everybody else's time miserable by screaming and by, banging on his sink and telling every, you motherfuckers ain't gonna sleep. If I can't sleep, you're not gonna sleep, and fuck all you, you know what I mean? So homeboy ended up getting a little bit of his medicine, with somebody that used to run his suck muscle, and he got caught slipping that day. Shout out to that white dude that picked his lock, though, man. That shit was crazy. I never seen somebody, in a county jail setting like that pick a lock. But I always remember that. That's something I always remember from the time that it happened. It was one of the things, but it was cool, man. Anyways, this episode 50, this is my second episode. I got a bunch of more war stories. Some of them, they're just quick ones, man, just to give you guys something to listen to. So hopefully you guys ain't getting burnt out on these types. I got some other ones that I know you guys are definitely going to want to hear, like the kinds where we're throwing cats in trunks or, going into houses, doing home invasions and robberies and stuff like that. I can go all the way back to talking about when I was in my teens, when, we were out there on the streets learning how to thump, when I was from LTM. And we used to go to the alley right there behind McDonald's. That's the infamous alley. That's where we learned how to throw hands. And that's basically that right there. That alley is where I earned my name, Boxer. That alley and Newman's Gym together, my ambitions of wanting to be a boxer is basically how I ended up earning my nickname. When I would go back there and I'd be thumping with cats that from either other hoods or a lot of the times from my neighborhood, I wouldn't go out there and be swimming like cats do, when they close their eyes and they're just swinging all wild. I used to go back there and act like I was a boxer. And I'm telling you guys, I know it's funny. You can laugh all you want. But when I was a kid, Rocky Balboa was like an idol of mine. That whole Rocky thing was big in those days. I used to watch the movies and I used to play the song. I used to play the songs, man, that, that movie that played throughout the movie when they cut those movies, Eye of the Tiger and some of those other songs. And, I would play them when I'd be out there in my backyard. My mom bought me some gloves when I was a kid, a little teenager, and we had a big ass tree, like a pine tree back there, a big sucker. And, it was high, and we climbed up in the tree and tied a rope around one of the branches and then tied a tire onto it. So that tire used to just swing. It was a swing that you could get on, but I used to use it when I was a kid I'd be back there I had a tiger. Get him, box. You know what I mean? I'd be back there punching that tire with my gloves for hours. That's what I used to do, just back there. So when I would end up fighting out there in the streets, I acted like I was like a real boxer. I used to try to stand like I was a boxer. I used to throw my jabs, and motherfucking homeboys be like, damn, this fool's like a little boxer. He's for real. You know what I'm saying? He got hands. So that's how I would end up earning my Picasso when I was a kid, man. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Again, it was just a quick one just to give you guys something. I'm going to see if I can pull the hat trick. I might try to even drop an Inner Demons right now. Sandman is already working on the last episode, so shout out to Sandman for doing his thing. He's going to try to get you guys out a chapter as well tonight for those of you that are waiting on the chapters. And we might end up running a live. It's just going to depend. We'll see what's up. It's 5 o'clock right now. I want to get you guys out some more videos, though, because, you know, the last couple weeks, it's almost like we've been straight, just dead, quiet. Nothing's been coming out. So I want to try to flood you guys with a bunch of videos and just get back out there to where we were. So again, this episode 50, this your boy B, and I'm out.